Hello everyone, welcome back to Valley of the Mist Block of the Month. I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And this is our June 2025 Block of the Month. So, in continuing on with our houses for the year, this month we are making a schoolhouse. And I thought it was seasonally appropriate because, as you see, it's an empty schoolhouse. And the kids are getting off for summer.
Yes.
So, I'll admit, we did see versions of schoolhouses where people put faces in the windows, but this is our empty schoolhouse.
Yes.
There's no faces. Okay, if you're making this block for the guild to turn one in, then these are due in September, at least as far as we know right now.
Yeah, things could change. Yeah.
But yeah, just watch the newsletter. Okay, so Shelley, what about fabric?
Okay, so this year our focus fabric is called Daisies Tie Dye by Island Batik, and you're going to need this.
Poppies.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Daisies.
Where did I get daisies from? I don't know. Poppies Tie Dye by Island Batik. And you're going to need to use this focus fabric if you turn your block in for the block exchange at the meeting. So you can buy this at the meeting if you need it. If you're making your own, just use whatever you want to, and this is for the door. Okay.
So not to scare you, before Shelley starts, I am going to show you there's a lot of pieces this month. But there's a lot of pieces because there's a lot of windows.
Yes.
So they're not hard pieces. They're just little pieces.
Yeah.
So she's going to go over all of these pieces right now.
Well, let's see if we can keep this straight. Okay, so first, the focus fabric is for the door, and it's a 3.5-inch square. Then for the sky, we're going to need two pieces that are 4.25-inch squares. And that's for by the tower. Then there's two 2.75-inch squares, and those are for the roof corners. Then two 2-inch squares for the roof tower. Then one 3.5 by 2.25-inch tower for the tower window. Then one 2-inch by 12.5-inch, and this is our piece you can maybe adjust at the end. Then for the windows, we're going to need 6 2-inch squares. And then
and keep in mind, that's for the windows in the schoolhouse. Like she said, the window in the tower is open, so you see sky.
Right.
You can make it a different color, but it's kind of sky.
Right. Okay. So, now the school, we're going to need two 1.25-inch by 11-inch piece that goes over and under the windows. There's going to be two pieces, one in each on either side.
Yeah, the bottom windows have a split piece.
Right. And then there's 6 1.25-inch by 2-inch window for the window rows.
These are the small ones?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll have to notice there's two different sized pieces that go in the window rows. There's the small ones, and then she's going to tell you the big ones now.
Now there's 3 2-inch squares, and those are the bigger ones.
So they go by the door or between the center windows on the second row.
Right.
Top row, sorry.
Right. Then there's two 2-inch by 4.25-inch, and that goes below the bottom windows.
These.
And then two 2.25-inch squares, and that's for the tower window.
So you have the window and you're making the tower around it.
Right. And then one 1.25-inch by 3.5-inch, and that's for the bottom of the tower.
This little strip here.
Right. And then for the roof, you're going to need one piece that's 11 inches by 2.75 inches, and then one piece that's 3.5 by 2 inches. Okay.
So, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to start from the top down on this one, and the first thing we're going to do, try to make it kind of easy. We have 3 sets of flippy corners that need to be done, which we've talked about before, but Shelley has hers drawn. In case you don't remember, on a flippy corner you have a bigger background piece, or the same size background piece, and you draw a line, a diagonal line on the corner you're going to add, and then you sew just next to that, one thread over from that line toward I'm going to say the top of the piece, because we're taking out these top corners, right. And then you fold it up, kind of make sure that it fills the corner that it's supposed to, And once you make it sure it fills, then you trim off that the upper part.
Right.
And
so you have a 1/4 inch seam.
Yeah, a scant 1/4 inch seam. Oh, I forgot to go over that. Scant 1/4 inch seam. And then that doesn't matter on that because we're sewing next to the line. But you're going to trim a 1/4 inch seam.
Yeah.
But and then you're going to put on each of these on the adjacent corner, kind of next to it. Some of them it's further away. Sometimes it's going to on 2 of them the corners kind of cross.
Yeah.
But on the big roof, they're far away, and you're just going to replace those corners. Do both of them. Sorry, I'm making a mess here. This would go here, it'll fold up here. This one goes here, it folds up here. So the piece that you end up with still should be the size of the piece that was the bottom piece. So this will still stay this size. You're just changing out those 2 corners.
They are going. Yeah, they're all 3 a little different in how they end, but because this one ends with just a 1/4 inch seam at the top. The tower is going to have a wider seam at the top.
And yeah, so I don't know if you can see, I'm going to pull this up. So on a lot of these, like on this one, the point where they come in, the point is just your seam allowance. Mm-hmm. So there's no, you just come to the point of this when you sew the block together. But this window comes down a little and you actually have some of the building showing between the 2 pieces. Right. So don't worry, that's how it's supposed to look. Okay, so we're going to make those 3 sets of flippy corners, these 2 that are part of the tower and this part of the main roof. And then, and so if you're going to trim them, they should trim back to the original size of the starting piece. Okay, and then we'll come back and we'll sew the extra stuff on. I did forget to mention at the beginning of this that for the whole block, except for on these flippy corners where you sew next to the line, we are sewing with a scant 1/4 inch seam. If we don't mention how to press it, then just press to the darker fabric or to the less complicated. Okay, so let's go and make all these flippy corner roof parts.
Yes.
All right, we have all the pieces sewn together, kind of, that we need to finish our roof.
Right.
So now let's finish the roof. So what we're going to do is you're going to sew this little bottom piece of your schoolhouse fabric to the bottom of the window for the tower.
Right.
And then sew the roof of the tower on top of that. Press those. And then as you press, you're going to sew these squares of sky to either side and press.
Right.
And then when that's done, you're going to sew the main roof of the schoolhouse to the bottom of that piece and press.
Right. Then we have the roof done.
And the roof is done. All right, so we'll come back with our completed roof. Okay, so we have our roof section done. And one thing that I kind of forgot to mention, that I've mentioned in previous videos, is these pieces are cut to the right size. So if you get a section, like say this tower section, if it's more than 4 1/4 when you're finished, then check something. Maybe you didn't cut something right, whatever. But this piece should match. And on this case, for this one in particular, if you're oversized, match at the top because we only have a 1/4 inch here. So if it's too big, you would have to trim at the bottom.
Right.
Okay. So now Shelly's going to go over this next section on the top row of windows.
Right. So we're going to be assembling here
4 windows.
4 windows.
Yeah.
So but there's 2 sets that are the same. We have there's these bigger sections, okay, but there's also these smaller sections of school. So one goes on either side of the window, and there's 2 sets of that. So sew those together. Then there's going to be this bigger piece, and you sew a window on either side of that.
So in this section, you're going to use 4 windows, 2 of the bigger of the window parts of the schoolhouse, and 4 of the smaller parts. And then when you have those subsections all sewn together, you're going to alternate them and sew this row across. So it's going to be small, window, big, window, small. And that, when you're done, should be 12 1/2 inches. No, it's not 12 1/2 inches wide. It's as wide as this schoolhouse piece,
Right.
which is.
Well, actually, it'll be the same. Oh, the next piece you put on, it'll be the same.
Oh yeah, what are these pieces? Yeah, let me look. So these over and under
11
ones.
something.
Oh yeah, 11 inches.
Yeah.
So the width of this when it's done should be 11 inches. Sorry about that. Okay, so after you have that done and pressed, and if that is oversized, I would trim a little on the outside of the two outer windows
Sure.
to even that up.
Yeah.
So you're going to have that whole row together, and then we want you to sew these two 11-inch pieces of the schoolhouse, one to the top and one to the bottom, and press. And
Are we going to add on, or are we going to?
oh yeah, and then when that's done, you're going to sew that whole section to the roof.
Right.
So we'll have like a school hanging in the air with no
Door.
no first floor.
Yeah, no first floor.
Okay. All right, we're in the home stretch here. Shelley's going to go over these last row of windows, but first, there's a decorative item you must do to the door, which is pretty minor. What's that, Shelley?
Okay, so this is supposed to look like a double door. So the idea is to sew a contrasting thread or a wider stitch or some fancy stitch, whatever you choose to do, down the middle, so you can make it look like two doors.
Yeah. So, however you want to do that,
Right.
You can sew one line of stitching down the middle.
Right.
It's easy, maybe if you press it, and then you can sew down the pressing.
Yeah, I
in
think
the
I
middle.
did like a chalk line and sewed on
Yeah,
it, but
yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
you did on yours. You have
Yeah.
a light color.
I do, and I'm going to try a dark color on this one to
And I
see
used
how it looks.
black on mine, so you know.
Yeah. And so on this one, I did what's on my machine looks like a kind of 3 stitches, but it kind of goes back and forth, and it's not very wide. It's a little heavier.
That's
than
actually
a
what
single
I
stitch.
did on this one. Yeah,
Okay.
So.
Okay, so we get that done.
Yep.
And this is a square, so just sew it down the middle of.
Right.
And then when you go to put it on, remember, it's not a Dutch door; it's a double door. So
Yes.
orient it correctly.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to sew these last windows, and they're
Right.
kind of the same,
Right.
but
Not
Shelley
exactly.
will explain.
Yeah. Here again, we have some wider school pieces and narrower school pieces. So we're going to still do a set with a window and a narrow one and a wide one on each side. We're going to do two sets of that. Okay.
Press it after you're
And
done.
Press it. Then we're going to want to sew the bottom on. But to do that, they have to be opposites. You have to flip one of them over so that the wide piece ends up next to the door on both sides.
Okay, and then sew that bottom piece of the school underneath it. Press that, and then sew those two to either side of the door.
Right.
And then the school is and then sew that to this top part.
Right.
And then your school is complete. Now, we didn't mention this piece was how tall?
It was 9.5 tall, and then
So up to now,
11.
11
which I already
wide.
said.
Okay, so then we put that on. This whole thing should be 12.5 inches tall.
Right.
If it's oversized, you can wait at the end and trim it. If it's too long, if it's too short, you might need to
Just
fix
some
the seam.
seams.
Fix the seam.
Yeah.
But you're going to sew this. The next thing we're going to do is sew this last edge piece on the school, and it goes on the left side of the school. And if your piece is not 11 inches wide, then you need to make this piece wider.
Right.
But it should be 11 inches because these pieces we sewed in the middle were 11. If I would match at the top corner because that's the edge we want to match. We only have a 1/4 inch seam up here, so if it's longer, you're going to trim off the bottom of the school, not at the top.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to come back with our finished blocks. All right, our schoolhouses are finished. They look really good.
Yeah.
And I like this. I did this with a dark thread. And actually, I left my bobbin thread as white with that like triple stitch. It kind of rolled it in it, so it kind of looks pretty cool.
And we aren't mentioning this exactly because we are not doing applique, but you could always put a bell in the tower if you really wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. But
right now it's an empty
I thought you said
tower.
we weren't mentioning it,
Well,
and then you mentioned
now it's like the bell fell off, so. Or nobody wanted to hear the bell ring. I
Right.
don't know.
it. All right, so this is the Schoolhouse block is done. We have 6 more to go this year.
Did we say when this one's back or not? When we
Yeah,
turn it in?
it's due in September
Okay.
because in the summer our guild meetings are different. As far as we know, I mean something
Yeah.
could change,
Yeah.
but as far as we know.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have another fun block when we come back next month. You'll have to think of what kind of house we might be doing, but
For the summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know.
you never know. All righty.